Welcome back to Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and today is my review of The Batman. And I don't normally do movie reviews on this channel. In fact, I don't think I've ever done a movie review. However, because this is a Batman movie, I thought this would be a great opportunity to start doing it. So I did get to see the film on Friday evening, and let me tell you what, I really actually enjoyed the film. And I know that a lot of people are concerned with every new movie that comes out, especially any kind of geek property that comes out, that there's going to be the message, as the critical drinker likes to say, crammed down our throats. However, that actually is not the case with this film. I am very, very happy to say, and I would actually put this up there right at number 2 on my list of Batman films, The Dark Knight being the one that is better in my opinion. But for what it's trying to do and the things that it does that have never been done before, I think it's a fantastic film. It really is. This is the first Batman movie that I think is actually primarily focused on Batman. Most of the other Batman movies you see are pretty much stolen by other characters, and even when they're not really focused on villains, they're focused on interpersonal relationships with, like, Bruce Wayne and his struggles and how he's trying to reconcile what he's going to do regarding the loss of his parents, and how he's going to try to fix Gotham going forward. And there really isn't a whole lot of screen time devoted to Batman himself. However, in The Batman, that has changed. I would say that about 80% of the film actually has Batman on screen, and that is a fantastic change and a welcome respite from what we typically see. So on that alone, it's a fantastic movie. It's already scored points for me there. So the main characteristics that people are looking for in a great Batman movie are whether or not the movie itself is good, and I can say that it's definitely good. But the next thing is, what's the actor like in the role of Batman? And Robert Pattinson is a great Batman. And let's be real, let's be honest. The suit really does most of the acting with Batman, and there's not really a whole lot of artistic license that the actors have. And the artistic license that they do have is generally focused around the voice and how they do a Bat voice. Pattinson does a great Batman voice. It's not too low, it's not too weird, it's not too try hard. It's just right. And that's something that a lot of people were talking about, with the fact that they didn't really have a whole lot of faith in Pattinson as Batman. And a lot of those opinions were based upon, Robert Pattinson in Twilight. But the fact of the matter is, the past 10 years or so, Pattinson has really been doing a lot of excellent work in trying to, expand his range as an actor. And he's worked with a lot of really fantastic directors. So I'm not going to get too far into that, other than to say that has informed his portrayal of Batman, and I think he does a fantastic job. The other thing that's really important about any good Batman movie is how Gotham is portrayed. And with the exception of the Burton films, we haven't really seen a Gotham that's very oppressive and very evocative of the kind of stuff that we typically see in the comics. For the first time in a very long time, we actually have Gotham that looks like what you would find in the comic book. In fact, this Gotham, I think, looks a lot like how David Finch draws Gotham in Tom King's initial run. I heard that they actually went and filmed a bunch of different locations and then combined those all together. And unlike, say, Christopher Nolan's Gotham, which is basically Pittsburgh and Chicago combined together, this one actually does not look like any particular city that is famous or that you've seen. Obviously, if you live in one of these cities, you may recognize different buildings here and there. But to the untrained eye, it does actually look like its own character. And that's really important in a Batman movie. Gotham itself is kind of a character, and you really want to have that nailed just right. Otherwise, the film tends to suffer. So you definitely want to nail Gotham, and Matt Reeves does a fantastic job with Gotham in this film. Next, I want to talk about the Batcave. The Batcave doesn't really look like your traditional Batcave, but that's okay. And the reason why is because this is early on in Batman's career. So we don't have a lot of the trophies that you typically see. We don't have, like, the dinosaur or the giant penny or the card. It's really early on, and it looks more like, a workshop for Bruce Wayne as Batman. And I think that they were really successful with how they did that with the cave. And that leads me to the Batmobile. And, I'm going to spend a little bit of time here on the Batmobile, because most Batmobiles don't have the intro that this Batmobile has. And I will say, without a doubt, unequivocally, that this is the greatest introduction of a Batmobile ever. And the way that they did the sound on this is terrifying. I I highly recommend that you find the best sounding theater, the best sound system that you can find in a theater, and see this before the end of the theatrical run, because there is nothing quite like it. And now, a lot of people will say that, Batman needs to have a Batmobile that's stealthy. In fact, I've seen several people say this, and they're wrong. The Batmobile is not about stealth. It's about intimidation and about being just, all around badass and awesome. And this is all around badass and awesome. It's not as technologically, sexy to look at on the outside. It's got more of a kind of like, bruiser look, kind of like an unfinished look to it. And it's definitely got that classic muscle car look to it as well. But the fact of the matter is that it does the job, and it's part of the whole theme and motif of Batman not really being into his prime yet. He's still on the upward trajectory, and it fits that aesthetic. And oh my God, it sounds amazing. I would say that it actually kind of reminds me of Ghost Rider in the way that it is portrayed with the lighting and the sound. It's just a phenomenal masterpiece. And I would say that the Batmobile alone is worth the price of admission to this film. So, I can't really say, I can't stress this enough. It is, in my opinion, the best portrayal of a Batmobile ever in a live action film, maybe even one of the animated films. So I haven't really seen all the animated films. So definitely Batmobile is A++. It is perfect. It really, I honestly, I can't really say enough about it. So, but I will stop and I will move on to Gordon. Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon is actually a pleasant surprise. I'm not really a fan of changing up the, ethnicity or the gender or the sex of a character unless you're the original creator of said character. But if you're going to do it, you want to make sure that you do it you want to make sure that you do it in a way that honors the spirit of the character. And Jeffrey Wright has that in spades. He does a great job as Jim Gordon. And, I had my reservations because I was concerned about, the message, again, as the critical drinker likes to say. But it turned out to be an unfounded concern. And Jeffrey Wright, who is a phenomenal actor, even though I totally disagree with him on a lot of other different things, I can't, deny the fact that the man knows how to act and knows how to act very, very well. So Jim Gordon, Jeffrey Wright, good choice, good setup there, and good casting. And it's just a really great portrayal of Jim. So, that leads me to Alfred. Andy Serkis as Alfred doesn't have a whole lot to do in the film, but I like Andy Serkis, and I think that he hits the right notes for where Alfred needs to be at this stage. And a lot of people are going to say, he's not like Alfred in, like, say, Michael Caine or, say, like in the original Burton films. But the fact of the matter is that I think that he does a great job as Alfred, even though he doesn't have a whole lot to do. Hopefully, we will see more of him going forward. So, on to the villains. Penguin is not... Well, before I get into it, the villains are more realistically grounded. They're not exotic, and they're not really true to the comics in the way that they're crazy in the comics. Penguin, walks around with an umbrella and he waddles and he's got a giant nose and he squawks. That's not the Penguin in this film. This Penguin is just an organized crime, nightclub manager, and he has a little weird walk. He's not like, he doesn't waddle so much, and he does have a bit of a protruding nose, but he doesn't squawk, and he comes by the Penguin nickname, honestly. And I think that, they did a really good job of doing his portrayal by Colin Farrell, because he's not, super intimidating. It's just that he's just a guy trying to make his way through the world as an organized crime boss. So that's something that I really like about it. And it helps bring, the portrayal of Batman down into a more realistic setting as well. In fact, I would say that the villains in this film are actually more realistic than even the Christopher Nolan iterations of these characters. So Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, there's not really a lot to say. She is a big part of the film, but the fact that she's Catwoman is kind of really well played down. I mean, she's a cat burglar and she has a lot of cats, and her name is Selena. But, there's not really a whole lot of other, typical Catwoman stuff you'd be looking for in a film. I mean, she fights really well, and she's definitely someone who has kind of a, mixed allegiance kind of situation, which is typically what Catwoman is like in the recent portrayals of her. But it wasn't anything super spectacular. So I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't amazingly mind blowing. One fun fact I didn't realize, she's actually the voice of Catwoman in the Lego Batman movie, which is a phenomenal, hysterical movie, and you should go see that if you've not seen it. And which leads me to the Riddler. The Riddler is the main villain of the film, and they actually went in a way that I thought was smart, because usually the Riddler is a garish, cartoonish figure, as seen by Frank Gorshin or, Jim Carrey, big, bright, really sticking hardcore to what the comics portray him as. But in this film, which is, trying to be more of a realistic take, they actually found a way to kind of look for analogs in the real world that could be, what the Riddler might be like. And in this case, they made him a lot like the Zodiac. So that was a smart choice. He's really into ciphers, and he's crazy, and he's sadistic, and but he doesn't stand out. It's not any kind of scene stealing, movie stealing performance. If you watch the film, you're not going to be like going, oh my, you're not going to see a lot of people dressing up as the Riddler. So it's not quite like Heath Ledger in the least, but it's a solid shift for the role, and I think Paul Dano does a solid job with it. And you don't really find out much about his motivations till towards the very end of the film. But ultimately, he's a great foil for this particular iteration of Batman. Those are some of the things that I like about the film, but there are some cons, and the biggest one of those is the fact that it is a very long film. It is 3 actual hours, 3 by your watch hours. So bear that in mind. There is a stinger at the end of the credits. Don't stay for it. It's not worth staying to see it, I promise you. You'll find it on the internet in no time, so don't punish yourself. It's worthless as far as that is concerned. That being said, the movie just, it's like the Lord of the Rings Return of the King extended edition version long. So it doesn't have any business being that long. It's one thing if it's got stuff to say and stuff to actually do, but they could have cut this easily by another 20, 30 minutes and made this a much more palatable and consumable film. But it is what it is. So that is something that I didn't quite like. Additionally, it does kind of marinate in the emo. It doesn't really need to marinate in the emo. They could have cut some of that stuff out, but it's what they wanted to do. Maybe Reeves was thinking this was his only shot to do a Batman movie. That's not the case. They clearly have decided to make a second one in recent news. I've heard them announce that. So ultimately, altogether, it's a great movie. Definitely the second best Batman movie I've seen. It portrays Batman the way he is in the comics. There's a lot of detective aspects to it. And, I highly recommend the movie. So again, thanks for listening to me ramble. This is Comics with Drew. My name is Drew, and I'll catch you next time.